Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this very important discussion on new strains and new opportunities in education. With us, we have the Deputy Minister, Mr. Angelos Syrigos, Mr. John Philos, Professor at the Pantheon University, welcome, and Mr. Yorgos Milonadis, Adjunct Professor of Strategy and Entrepreneurship at the London Business School. Mr. Syrigos, we will start with you, talking about the pandemic. The pandemic constituted and still constitutes a major threat to society. How big a threat was it to education, and what did you do in order to deal with this threat, and what would you like to have done differently? Now, with regard to education, the pandemic was a threat because the students were at risk, and by students, children, I mean students of primary school, middle school, high school, university students. So all the students were at risk of missing out on education. So what happened could be considered as a miracle because it took place in a very limited time, in other words. We managed to forge the e-education, which became very widespread and very popular. And I'm replying to your question, what did we win from this whole story? We actually won, to put it this way, a different era. With Mr. Philos, we are colleagues at Pantheon University. And you need to know that if I ever get sick, I will be able to talk with the secretariat of my department, provide my students with the codes to access the lesson, and give the lesson without any problem whatsoever. I will be at home, the students will be at the university. The same stands for students. If anything happens to them, they will be able to attend the lessons virtually from the comfort of the home. This is true for the postgraduate degrees. When it comes to the undergraduate degrees, it is very difficult and very boring to talk in front of a screen without an audience. So this is a little bit different. Now, what could we have done differently? It is a fact that all of these changes were very abrupt. And unfortunately, not all students had the necessary means to follow the lessons. We tried to change that. To a certain extent, we managed to decrease the social inequalities. We managed to overcome certain difficulties and problems, and we managed to deal with this threat. Of course, at the same time, we realized some other problematic areas, like the digital, the electronic illiteracy. There were some parents that hadn't heard of internet connection. They weren't able to ensure a connection for their child. But these cases were very few. And this, of course, highlights the importance of training the students in using electronic means. Still, there were certain opportunities. What opportunities did you identify in the context of the pandemic? First of all, I realized that there were lessons, many lessons that had been recorded by professors. I came across these lessons accidentally. The point is that these lessons are many, and they will be brought to the surface very, very soon. Another thing that I consider to be very important is the easiness with which we use now all these systems. In the past, we weren't in the position to use them. Now, in a matter of months, we are able to use them very effectively. Another major opportunity was the interconnection with other universities. Because of necessity, we had to come into contact with other universities digitally. Now, this can be done for a limited number of students, and it can become the norm. In other words, in the context of a postgraduate degree or at the later stages of an undergraduate degree, the students can follow, for example, the degree of the Sorbonne University or of Montpellier University, and respectively, French students can follow the lessons of my university. If we were saying these things 3 years ago, they would think that we were crazy, but now this is the reality. Okay, I would like to address the same question to the professors. Which opportunities did you identify in the context of the pandemic? Shall I start? Yes. First of all, as Mr. Syrigos said, we saw that our life became digital, which was for the better. And in the process of this digitalization, we changed very quickly. In the first semester, the professors encountered certain difficulties in using the digital means, but quickly and steadily, they became very effective in using them. Moreover, it was an exercise that proved to be very beneficial, and professors became very accustomed with using these digital means. Something else I want to mention is that the percentage of attendance of students was increased, especially when it comes to schools and degrees where the attendance was not compulsory. Third, facilitation of meetings between professors and students, and especially for classes that involve projects. When it comes to these, personally, I used to meet students at the weekend in order to talk about the project. Now, this can be done digitally. Another very important opportunity was that the meetings of the professors were now in quorum. In other words, thanks to the facilitation ensured by the digital means, all the professors were in the position to attend the meetings. And moreover, especially with regard to Pantheon University, during the year of the pandemic, we were going through a procedure of external accreditation of degrees. So thanks to the digital means, we were in the position to connect with the interested parties. We were in the position to connect with the students, and moreover, we had also all the necessary means to come up with a new structure that ensured the attendance of classes either in person or online. At the same time, there was recording of the lecture and of the class, which was also very beneficial. Okay, and let's talk about the children. Let's take the example of a 19-year-old who, after 2 years of preparation, sits the national exams and is accepted in the university. So this student actually completed the first year in front of a screen without any physical contact with the classmates or professors and without actually visiting the facilities of the university. How can the university help this young man or woman experience the normality or the life of university education? Look, personally, I attended the classes of the university in person. I was at the university on a daily basis. Of course, these today things are different. My daughter, when she was a student of university, she wasn't in the position to attend the classes for 8 months because there was a strike of the administrative staff. But anyway, this was just another example. Let me answer to your question. With the upgrade that was made, the upgrade of the Pantheon University website, there are now some sub-choices that also show what university life at Pantheon University is. Of course, now the classes will be held in person, which is very good and very encouraging. Personally, I'm always happy to give lessons in person. And by the way, the municipality of Nea Smyrni gives us 4 rooms in which we can give either undergraduate or postgraduate lessons. Similarly, other authorities, other municipalities or institutions provide us with more solutions. All of these solutions and interventions aim at increasing the number of in-person classes in order to have this physical contact, in order to listen to what the students have to say. You understand that when there is an online lesson, you cannot easily listen to what the student has to say. I believe that all these problems and issues will be resolved when the classes are resumed in person. Moreover, the student union, which was something you mentioned, is something that is going very well. The dormitories are also doing very well. That's all in broad lines. Ms. Peloni, a short comment. The lesson in person cannot be replaced. This is widely accepted. It is commonplace. Moreover, we have an increased rate of vaccinated students, and I believe that this proves that the students want classes in person. Mr. Professor, what opportunities did you identify in the pandemic?
Off mic, we cannot hear the speaker from the screen. Unfortunately, there is no sound in the booth. Apologize, there's no sound in the booth. So a huge effort of adaptation. We can't be in the class from Friday to Monday. On Monday, the subjects were presented through Zoom platform. Originally, all the lessons were online. Then they were online and recorded, however. They're not live, and therefore the university students could follow at their ease and respectively be noted on the basis on exams that were also submitted on a recorded basis. Then we moved on to have lessons at the same time online and recorded, and we are currently at a stage where mainly lessons online and live, but they are no longer recorded lessons. So in a way, one might say that education has officially transited to digital era. But if we are more careful, it's not precisely so. So what did we learn? We learned that adaptation is possible, one thing, one lesson taught, and we saw it because the years went on. In other universities, even physics experiments took place in distance. Students graduated. Even relatives attended the ceremonies in some cases electronically. We learned that the demand for university education was inelastic because there were no alternatives for that. For instance, for Alma Business School, the tuitions went higher before the second lockdown. And we had an increase in number of registered students. And we also learned that the demand for corporate continuous training was elastic because executives had to do with other agencies. And therefore, the demand swindled within few weeks, which had a huge impact on the finances of the school. We also learned that adaptation also showed opportunities. In the big picture, we saw that life could go on, both in education and the exchange of views, and this was extremely positive. In the classroom, we saw the introvert students through other tools that distant learning offers could express themselves through the written word, and that rose the expectations of the discussion in the class, and this was extremely positive, and things must be kept in the physical education. We also had another opportunity on the paradigm of education, that is the financial shock also changed the model, not on the business environment, where the cost was the same, but mainly in the corporate training seminars. I see a will of experimentation for educational experiences where the presence of the instructor may be substituted by low-paid mentors and experts. So there's a question here with regard to the economic paradigm, with regard to the cost of university education. And the last lesson learned is what Mr. Syrigos has said. The adaptation was non-natural. Attending through the screen is very tiresome. There's a huge workload. We realized how important are the impulsive exchanges and reactions that take place in a classroom and which were annihilated. And we saw that because recently, over the last days, we saw in the UK huge increase for intensive short-term training of businessmen, and we've seen 85% of the university students coming in class, and a small percentage goes out and comes back. So we see a very intense desire of the people to come back in the classroom. So the conclusion that I draw is that universities fulfill a deep human need as a meeting for a congregation exchange of views, and distance learning is complementary. It cannot substitute it. Yes, this is very important, not to be constantly on the screen. I see. So, a question addressed to all of you. What is the future of education? How will it change through the e-media? How will the interest of students change in the future? What do you see for the future? Mr. Syrigos. Well, in an undergrad level and big audience, it would be nice not to change the live education with physical presence. It cannot be substituted. The question would be raised, and what will you retort? This change of use, this is what is gained. Otherwise, you would be sending a book and say, read it out, that's it. That's not so. That's what the instructor, the real teacher, does. Now, in small audiences, especially in postgrad studies, yes, one can play with electronic means more easily because one can exchange views. What is most important, the exchange of views. And then we can see what comes along with all the modern means. With the Zoom platform, for instance, one can upload at the same time to show things which would not easily show. You are ready to show them here on the Zoom platform, and these are great advantages. I totally agree, says with this the live education on the subjects and the educational method, says Philos. There are not many cases where some professors, because they had their own book and wanted to maintain that theory and what had written, would keep and stick to that. Now we see the new colleagues that come along that bring along the new knowledge, which is multiplying on the same subject each year. So we all need vocational training. The action started with lifelong vocational training centers, which, depending on the supply and demand, will be also a guide for the improvement of the curricula. And we will see subjects, for instance, for instance, for litigation or arbitration or mediation for lawyers, or VDR we had. Furthermore, the connection with the digital state is very important. In a subject where I participate that has to do with taxation, I told them we will not have a book we will have the web pages of the Ministry of Finance and the IRS headquarters. And this is how we are to move. And finally, if I may add, is the integration of entrepreneurship. This is the most important subject, which is necessary in each and every university and every faculty. I got jealous the other day when I attended an event of the agronomy university, where they do have such a subject of entrepreneurship, because training must be interrelated with the labor market. And great thanks to the Hellenic American Chamber of Commerce that allowed us each year to bring along students that could attend and get to meet members of the market, of the labor market. Thank you. Mr. Milonadis, how do you view the future of education? I totally agree with what the colleagues have said. I believe that perhaps we've already had digital technology integrated. Nothing will change greatly. I believe that the big queries have to do with the subjects per se of the curriculum. Subjects such as sustainability, which is something sought after very much. Issues such as digital technologies with regard to competition. All these are major issues that are of interest for the students, and we will be offering all the more subjects in those sectors. Thank you all for being with us today for such a most timely and important subject that concerns the future active citizens. Thank you very much.